Please rise for silent invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the clerk call the roll?
Councilmember Ford,
Present.
Councilmember Bastian,
Here.
Councilmember Stiltner,
Here.
Vice Mayor Tremont,
Here.
Mayor Burnett.
Here. Discussion item authorization appeal to the 5th District Court of Appeals, tabled on August 20th, 2019 City Council meeting. I need a motion to remove that item from the table.
I move to remove it from the table.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? The item is now on the table for discussion. Margaret, you want to tell us what we're talking about?
Yes, Mayor and council members, this case involves the move over law. That's a Florida law enacted a few years ago. The case was initially heard after a traffic citation was issued for not moving over. The trial court determined that there were 3 specific findings stated in its order, and that was that the blue light was displayed when the officer was on the motorcycle, that the motorcycle was on the roadside or the side of the road, and that the vehicle that passed the officer was traveling in the same direction. Those are all elements of the move over law, and the hearing officer in that trial court decision found those 3 elements to be present. And the next thing that happened, and that was successfully prosecuted, the traffic citation was the person driving who received the traffic citation was found to be in violation of the move over law, as well as one other citation, but that's not the subject for tonight. The next thing that happened is the person who received the citation appealed the trial court's decision to the next level of court, which is our circuit court. The circuit court reversed the trial court. Now I want to talk to you just a minute about the responsibility of the circuit court in hearing that appeal. The circuit court is responsible to look at the record from the trial court and determine if there was evidence of competent, substantial evidence. So a basis for that trial judge's decision. And they're also required to determine that there was due process accorded to the person who received the citation. It's my position that the circuit court was in error. They were not allowed by law to reweigh the evidence that was determined by the trial judge. The trial judge issued the findings, and in the circuit court proceedings, the facts were reweighed and the findings were changed. That's not permitted. The circuit court is only to look to see if there was the competent, substantial evidence, not change it. The other thing that causes this matter to be an error is that the circuit court had none of the record. 2 people testified at trial. Circuit court didn't even look at that, didn't have it, didn't consider it. How can you determine if competent, substantial evidence was presented at the trial court when you don't even know what was presented? So that was the most blatant of the errors. Now, on behalf of the city, I'm requesting that you authorize me to take the next level of appeal, and that is to the District Court of Appeals in Daytona Beach. I'm seeking a finding that the circuit court was in error. The circuit court deviated from the requirements by reweighing the law, reweighing the facts of the trial court, and by not having a record. That resulted in a miscarriage of justice, and that is the move over law was not followed. Now, this case involves your emergency vehicles. Could be your law enforcement, could be your fire response team, could be your utility response team and could be solid waste response that is utilizing your roadway to deliver the public services. The state saw fit to adopt this move over law for their safety. A lot of people were being involved in accidents by not moving over. So to protect those public employees who are providing those services, they ask that the drivers move over, and that has two elements. They can move over or they can slow down. Sometimes you just can't move over in traffic. Now, the circuit decision is considered a precedent in 4 different counties. Our circuit is composed of Flagler, Putnam, Volusia, and St. Johns County. So I just want you to think for a minute of the ramifications of this decision throughout those 4 counties, throughout those employees who are providing the public service. Last week you heard when I first asked this question that there were some differing opinions of the members of the public, and this week I'm providing you the facts relating to my request. I believe that I would be wrong if I didn't seek your authorization to file the appeal. That doesn't mean we're going to win it. That doesn't mean we're going to lose it. We're going to do what we have the legal right to do to preserve the utmost safety of our public servants. Upon the council's approval, if you do decide to approve this appeal, it will be filed before the deadline. The deadline is August 29th. We are prepared to proceed with the filing, and the petition has been prepared for that purpose. Mayor and council members, I stand ready to answer any of your questions.
I'm sure there'll be 1 or 2. As we go through this, council, just let me remind you, we're not here to try the case or decide the merits of the case so much as to what an outcome should be, but as just to a point as to whether we feel it in our hearts whether this is worth supporting or not. We'll let the legal process take its course if that's what we decide to do. That's for them to judge. Ours is to judge to a point whether this is worthy of continuing on appeal. Let's, why don't we begin with questions from the person who did not have enough information last time, but hopefully does now. Marilyn?
Yes, I had asked some questions of legal. I believe I got the answers. Ms. Roberts, it's my understanding that the officer was at a corner, if you will, or an intersection of Bay Shore and Ridgewood Avenue, correct?
That's my understanding
Okay.
of the record.
And the other thing is, one of the comments was that there may be some taint, if you will, on the part of the deputy city attorney because an action had been filed against him. And so I had asked you about that, and is there any current action? Has there been any problem with the deputy city attorney relative to this matter that would suggest a taint?
There is no taint. I am aware, after speaking with the Florida Bar, that there has been no action filed or currently pending. There had been previous complaints, but they were not acted on by the Florida Bar, and they are no longer pending.
Okay.
That occurred last year.
Okay. And then what precipitated the incident, if you will, or the officer and Mr. Traska's interaction was conduct-based or misconduct, driving too close and not providing sufficient room or safety for the officer. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, I believe the record shows that Traska stayed in the lane closest to the officer's vehicle. And although there was a lane and opportunity to move over, Traska did not move over, and the officer responded and wrote the citation for not moving over.
Okay, thank you.
Chase?
No, I don't, I don't have any questions.
Drew?
I don't have anything either. I spoke with her and listened to Marilyn. I have enough. I'm good.
Scott?
I don't have any questions.
Or any here like to speak to this? Come on up.
Hi. My name is Russell Adams. I live in Port Orange. It seems to me that I don't believe this type of case would warrant the extra expenditures that it would take to seek what she's seeking. It just seems like it would be a lot of wasted money and time and effort, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Mark, you wanted to speak, right? Come on up.
Mark Jason, Herbert Street, 667. Everybody up on this stage or dais up here probably has MOVE Act close to their hearts because of family that worked in law enforcement, firefighters, and so on. But try to take emotions out of it. The Traskas, I think they've had their punishment already. I know all too familiar what it's like to have a punishment for expressing the First Amendment right, circled in a parking lot by 4 officers and a sergeant, I think it was. It is so eerily familiar to me that's why I had to come here and say this. It's got me unnerved. So, but retaliation for the First Amendment, if that's what this ultimately was and what you could see, is bullying. I mean, it really is. You have to stop if that's the case, because it's just too eerily familiar. I think someone said there was a $400 fee for this. I do photography and I make more than $400 in an hour. This is not going to cost your city $400. Not. I can't 100% say it, but I'm just, the people that wrote my contract charged me more than that. Lastly for that there, you said this sets precedents. Your city doesn't like precedents. They don't like the Smith versus Cummins. They don't like Madonna versus Fernandez-Rundle. They don't like any of the case law that you tell them when you're doing stuff. So this precedence is not going to make a difference in this town. Just leave these people alone. That's all I want you to do. I don't know them, but I've been through it.
Thanks, Mark. Come on up, Robert.
Robert Reinhagen, 1425 Dexter Drive, Port Orange. Council members, Mayor. In reading through the Circuit Court decision, as I saw it, it seems like the idea that he was on the highway is really stretching the fact, because they were on the side road. And so I agree that I don't think it sets any precedent. But I just think it's just let it go. Don't fight it. If there's this bad blood back there somewhere, and this guy is a criminal or whatever, or has a background that's unsavory, something will come up again, and you can pursue that. But to pursue this, I think, is inappropriate. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Robert. Ted, I know you wanted to speak to this.
Yeah,
Here
we
he
got a
is.
signing sheet.
Come on up.
Thank you. My name is Ted Knoftel. I live on Chickadee Drive. First of all, let me just address this bar complaint. A complaint was filed on August 15th, 2019. Now, I don't know why that's hidden to the city attorney, but certainly I believe I forwarded a copy to you guys maybe an hour ago, so you have the complaint in front of you. So in terms of it not existing, that's crazy. This is a matter of trust. Everything on that dais should be a matter of trust. And I want to quote Councilman Stiltner, who a couple of weeks ago, in connection with the first the home, this homeless shelter, what a disaster a classic example of why taxpayers distrust their local government. Well, guess what? This is another matter here tonight that the citizens will look at and want to hold you guys to some measure of trust and accountability. And those of you who are thinking about supporting this matter here tonight need to look right into the camera and explain to the people how their interest is going to be advanced with this appeal. Not the attorney's interest or anyone else's interest, but the taxpayers. You're getting ready to spend even one thin dime of their money on this. Well, you better tell them how it's going to protect them. The notion that public safety is involved is complete hooey. The notion that this is going to be a precedent, people are going to be clipping cops on the side of the road, is crazy. Every now and then someone gets successful with a stand your ground law, but that doesn't throw out our murder or manslaughter laws, and this is not going to throw out move over. The circuit court, as Margaret said, was charged with determining whether or not there was competent evidence, and they concluded there wasn't. So there it is. This notion that we've got to peek and see if we can see a faint blue light. Last Sunday morning, I happened to pass a bike, a police bike, who had a car stopped on the corner of Nova and Dunlawton. And I just took a picture going through. And when I looked at my picture, the back of that bike looked like a Christmas tree. There was no peeking to see if you could find a faint blue light. The back of the bike looked like a Christmas tree when you snap a picture. And then the circuit court also found that he wasn't on the side of the road. He was off on a perpendicular road. So how far in a perpendicular road do you have to be before you're not subject to move over? So counsel, again, a matter of trust. You all know, you've all had feedback that citizenry do not trust local government today. And this is a great opportunity for you to show that you're sensitive to that. My God, the Traskas are not even in town, not even in state, to come here and speak for themselves tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Who else? Come on up, Sarah.
Sarah Jones, 44 Woodfield Drive. The matter of trust is a big thing. When this was presented at the meeting, at the official meeting, it was one little page, just a little brief introduction. At the very last end of the meeting, the way all of these requests for legal assistance hit. At the very last of a long meeting, one little page. And I've watched this behavior go on over the years, again and again. Now, when it was tabled, that has caused the city attorney to present more facts, to this time add some extra pages to more fully explain her position. I don't trust the whole thing. I don't trust it for several reasons. Number one, these requests for legal assistance always occur at the end. They should occur at a proper format in the beginning because they're matters of importance. Two, I don't trust it because the first time around it was a real short little boop boop, and now we got a little bit more facts. And I've been around, I'm old enough to know that eventually more facts are going to fall out. And then the last thing, which really makes me scratch my head, is that this is not such a big issue. If it was your own personal decision, spending your money, not the taxpayers' money, you would do a big thinking about, even though I'm probably right, is it worth spending the money? Or would you sort of walk away from it and just go on with your life? So that's the other thing is, do you use somebody else's money to make a decision that maybe could just as well be dropped? I have neither trust, nor do I think it makes sense to spend the taxpayers' money on this issue.
Thank you. Anyone else? No one else? Okay, it's back to council. Comments, questions? Start at this end this time. Scott?
So my comments about this would be, first off, that for me at least, this has nothing to do with an individual person who has received a citation at this point. This has everything to do with about the law itself and what the courts are going to rule and where they're going to draw the line. This doesn't, to me, it doesn't have anything to do about yesterday or today. This has to do about tomorrow. And I think that, I've been on several crashes in my lifetime that were part of what we now know as a move over issue, where not only law enforcement personnel, but citizens were injured, property destroyed. These things happen. That's why this law was created. And when they do happen, they're pretty significant. Both the ones that come to my mind that were the most impactful that I witnessed were vehicles that were significantly off what we would all look at as the main portion of the roadway. And so as I read what the court has ruled and listening to this particular, this information it seems to me like the one thing the courts need to give clarity on, again, for the future is where is the roadside? How far is far enough off or not far enough off? And there seems to be that debate in this, and as everybody looks at this, and I think that this is something that the courts need to bring clarity to, because this no longer is about the city of Port Orange. This no longer is about an individual person who got a citation or the officer that wrote it. This is about how do we handle similar instances moving forward tomorrow and the next day and the next day and on and on and on. And so that's what this court process is about. That's what the appeals court's job is, to have that final say, weigh everything out, and then validate precedents or change it to say this is how things are going to work moving forward, and this is where the rule is going to be. And we've obviously seen a hearing officer feel one way, and we've seen another judge feel another way, and the clarity is not really there. And I think that's important, not only for the safety of our residents and citizens across the state of Florida, but law enforcement, emergency personnel, anybody that is doing their job on a roadside deserves that measure of protection. No different than a pedestrian walking down the side of the street, a bicyclist riding a bicycle down the side of the street, or any of that other stuff. And there's some reasonableness to this. The highways, especially in this particular area, these are highways that are big enough for people to, if no other reason, even a law doesn't exist, it makes sense to me to be courteous enough and prudent enough to move over and create a heightened safety. I don't think that's unreasonable. I think that's extremely reasonable in all circumstances of that type of thing. So, for me, this isn't about a person that received a citation anymore, that particular person or that particular officer or any of that kind of stuff. This is about what about tomorrow, and how is this going to impact not just Port Orange, but the entire district now, and how officers and citizens can be protected and have a heightened measure of safety on the roadsides.
Drew? I can't even follow that up. That was so eloquently put, and I agree with him completely. This is not about that individual. It's about the circumstances that happened after that, and where it's going from here and what implications it could have. I worked in the field for a long time, and I can tell you that a lot of people don't obey the flashing lights. They get way too close. There were a few instances where I had to exit the fire truck, climb over the engine cowling, and exit on the other side because I couldn't get out the door because people were rolling along right on the highway with lights on. I was actually struck one time placing a wheel chock on a medical call at Walmart, right next to the truck, put the wheel chock down. Lady came by so close, her mirror hit me in the hip. So it does happen. People don't move over. So like I said, I've been there, done that, and experienced it. Or slow down. Yeah.
Chase?
I don't have any comment.
Marilyn?
I think Councilman Stiltner hit the issue on the head. This is the incident that brings the issue up, but it's really about roadside safety. I heard from citizens both by email as well as telephone. The wife of Mr. Trasker, who spoke last week, in fact, called me, and she said, in the interest of full disclosure, her husband typically gives the finger passing officers, and, you know, they should have thicker skins. I think she misses the point. The crux of this issue is officer safety, motorist safety, pedestrian safety. If her husband is so busy trying to send a message of displeasure to the police officer, and clearly he saw him, was his attention on the road? Was his attention on the car in front of him? I suggest not. And then when you couple that with photographs, is this a driver that is paying full attention to the road? Folks, this is about safety. The second point is, it's clear to me from what I've read and what I've heard, there are procedural and substantive issues. I can't decide, I wasn't there. There has been disagreement at the initial hearing and between the circuit court. So it's logical and reasonable to ask a higher court to set forth and decide on those procedural and substantive issues. And to the third part about cost, should we really be using the taxpayers' dollars? First of all, the bill is not that expensive. It's a $400 filing fee, contrary to the citizen who contacted me and said, oh my gosh, it's going to be thousands of dollars, when I said, no, it's $400. You've got staff time, yes, but some of that has already been done at the lower level. But look at it this way. If this was your spouse who got killed or maimed because somebody failed to move over, what price tag would you put on that? Taking all those things together, I'm in support of this motion.
Margaret, we'd agended this item last time and tabled it. What time constraints precipitated us needing to call a special meeting to settle this?
There is a strict window for filing an appeal. That window will close on the 29th. The decision of the circuit court was a little less than 3 weeks ago. So we are at the end of that 30-day window, and if we don't file timely, there is no appeal.
And if we didn't appeal, you mentioned precedent, how would that impact our ability to enforce this law moving forward?
The decision of the circuit court somewhat speaks to what they called nexus. Nexus is not part of the Florida law. It is not part of the Florida case law. So somewhat out of the blue, this term nexus becomes part of the decision making, and the deviation from the facts established at the trial court will create argument on the enforcement of all of these move-over citations. Now, the facts of this case were the first person to respond to the officer turned right onto a side street. So it will be somewhat focused on those kinds of facts where the first person who's pulled over turns off the main street, but the officer, of course, remained at the intersection, not only warning those on the main street that he was on the side of the street, but also those who may turn right and run right into the car that's been pulled over. So those are your conditions that are in the record, and the argument will be that, well, under those conditions, it's not a violation of the law.
aside from the filing fee and obviously time from your office, do you anticipate any other costs?
There is a, I will call it remote possibility that there could be an oral presentation to the court. I say it's remote. The review is discretionary by the court. I believe the basis of our petition is so clear that there probably will not be an oral argument. So very limited, maybe an hour or two of time.
Okay. I can tell you, just from my standpoint, I'm not thrilled about having to call a special meeting that the Traskas are not able to attend because of short notice. Albeit, I understand that the time constraints of filing an appeal require that. But at the same time, I'm balancing that with their need to be able to speak for themselves. But I also know the pushback on that is that we're not deciding the merits of the case, we're asking the judge to do it. So, I mean, that's,
They will be provided full notice and an opportunity to speak or file documents in response to the city's appeal, and that is part of the due process that is accorded.
of course, that still doesn't mean I have to like the fact that, I don't like the fact that they can't be here to speak to them, speak to this.
Understood.
But based on the clock, it is what it is. I need a motion for approval of the authorization of appeal to the 5th District Court of Appeals.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? There being none, call the roll.
Councilmember Ford.
Yes.
Councilmember Bastian.
Yes.
Councilmember Stiltner.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Tremont.
No.
Mayor Burnett.
No. 3-2 passes. That's all that comes before us this evening. For the special meeting, we will end the special meeting and begin the workshop in 5 minutes.